Well, it's good to be here. I know so many people in the audience who've taken my class or, met you in my life, but it's so strange for me to be standing at a microphone when I chose to tell stories through art. And now here I'm speaking, which is um, my Achilles heel is speaking, but that's mixed with my one of my greatest pleasures is making art. So maybe that'll temper it a little bit. I was going to go to Mississippi Art Colony a few years back, and in Mississippi Art Colony, you have to have an idea of what you're going to make, and you have to take your own supplies and whatever. And I was trying to think of, what project I could do, and my daddy said, how about Seymour Prater? And that's the first I'd heard of him, and so he uh, told me a couple of stories that he had heard about him, and so I went to the Pontotoc Library. That's a good place to find information about Seymour Prater if you're interested. They have a thick folder of accounts of Seymour Prater stories. Um, he was born in Coosa County, Alabama in 1867. He died at the Pontotoc Clinic at 78, and he's buried in Pleasant Grove Cemetery. When he was 8 years old, he moved to Wren in Monroe County in 1875 and then moved to Pontotoc Woodland Community in 1883. And it was in the hotel lobby in Aberdeen um, when the very young Seymour Prater was told by a stranger that he had unusual mental powers. And the man, and we don't know who the man was or anything about the man, told him how to develop these powers. And so he did so throughout his life. Um, so he could summon up a vision of an event out of the past and describe the scene in detail. And so he didn't do much from what I've read telling about the future. It's always of the past. So, you know, back then there were people that had kind of special powers, and they might now. I don't know about them, but if you had a wart, when you were little, you could go to somebody's grandma and she'd rub it off for you or something like that. And there was a man in Hurricane named Frank Spears, and he could stop the bleeding in animals. And so it was practical. If your horse had been injured, call Frank Spears. He'd come over and stop the bleeding, and nobody questioned it. They just knew this is where you go if you have this problem. This is where you go if you have this problem or that problem. So Seymour Prater had a business. Um, he first accepted people at his house in the Woodland community. Somebody reported that his yard would be covered up with cars and horses on Sundays, people wanting him to find things that they'd lost. And then eventually he got an office space in the Aberdeen building in Pontotoc, and it overlooked the Pontotoc Square. So started taking people in his office. So thought it was interesting. So thought about how I could do these stories. This is a picture of him, Seymour Russell Prater. And this is a book that Sidney Fisher wrote. It's called See No Evil. And it has a lot of short stories of Seymour Prater that she researched. So this is a very good book to have on hand. This is where I got a lot of my information. Um, he has a big family that still lives around in Pontotoc County. Very nice people. I'd seen this. One of the things I saw at the library was this Tom Bigby County magazine, and had an article about him, the seer of Pontotoc, they called him. Um, and he said he had a radio mind, and I'm not really sure what that meant, but what he would, I'll just tell you this later, wait till I get to and this is his tombstone in Pontotoc County. So he's one of the most interesting people in Pontotoc County, I believe. So I started thinking about how I could portray him, and I saw Mr. Herb. So asked him if he would bring his suit and put it on and let me take some pictures of him because he kind of looked like Seymour Prater. So I took Seymour Prater's picture and then Mr. Herb, and I started doing sketches until I could kind of join them together in a way, because I had not seen Seymour Prater before, of course. Now, Seymour Prater, when people had lost something, he would talk to them a little bit about the weather or about things that surrounded them losing the object. And then he would settle down and he'd do like this, and he'd say, I see, and then he'd tell him what he saw, as much as he saw. So I was trying to capture that in a painting. So there's a painting of him doing that there. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how I did it. I would get people to pose for me. There's my son. I took a lot of pictures of my son doing this and pictures of hands and whatever, and then trying to make them out of clay. And making things out of clay is much easier than painting or drawing. If you want something to go back in space with clay, you just push it with your finger back in space. It's like, there it goes. And painting or drawing, you have to mix up the right dark color, make it a cool color or a warm color depending on the color beside it. So much, thinking to do that I love to prefer clay. So here are some of the reference pictures that I used when I was going to make this picture, this piece of sculpture of this farmer with a cat on his shoulders. I just looked up, I'm Googling men in the 1930s, what do their boots look like and stuff like that. So lots of pictures of boots, the clothing. I have an app on my phone, an anatomy app that shows the human body as wire form, and I can move it around however I want to see, how the muscles and bones are positioned. So this story is in this book, and this man was from Aberdeen, I believe, and his name was Bob, this farmer. He had a cat named Mackie, and Mackie jumped on his shoulder all the time, and he just kept working with Mackie on his shoulder as much as he could. But he also had cows and chickens and whatnot. He has cow feed in a barrel in the barn, and he noticed that the feed was going down, and he wasn't using that much. So he put a rat trap right under the feed, covered it up, so catch a rat the next day. Well, the next day the trap was tripped and there was no rat, but he saw his neighbor later on and his hand was bandaged. So he said, "Looks like a rat beat you to a trap." And so the neighbor didn't like it. He didn't think it was funny. And so, they parted ways. A couple of days later, Mackie comes up missing. His cat comes up missing. And all these stories are kind of grim. And I had to tell them at a library in Bruce not too long ago. And the audience that showed up, they were all less than 6 years old. I still told the stories. I mean, Mama told me lots of bad stories when I was little about Goodman in Attala County. So anyway, it gives them character maybe. Anyway, so he went to Seymour Prater, the woodland community, and Seymour talked to him about the cat, talked to him about his farm, this and that. And he said, I see that your neighbor killed your cat. And he said, well, I can't just go and accuse my neighbor of killing my cat. He said, well, he also killed your son's dog. So anyway, that's that story. So I've done several iterations of that farmer and the cat just because I like the story, and I just I'll probably do even more. I talked to a famous sculptor a couple of years ago who said you need to make all of your pieces 3 times bigger at least. So that's on my list to do, is to try to remake all these and make them much bigger. The reason they're the size they are is because when I started going to Mississippi Art Colony, and by the way, it's the oldest art colony in the United States. It's the oldest working art colony in the United States that we haven't missed a year, or they haven't missed a year. Um, anyway, I would take my clay down there and I would have to bring it back wet, the clay wet, and so I had to put it in a tote from Walmart. So all of my things are at least the size of a tote from Walmart. So I need to start making some at home. So that's on my radar to do. So here are different poses of this. This piece of sculpture belongs to Bob McGee from Pontotoc. I asked him if I could he asked me about buying it several months ago, and I said, yes, but can I keep it a little while longer because I need to show it here and there, and he's been so nice. He said, just tell me when you're ready, And I remember seeing people with hats like this, and so that's why I put that hat on there. You know, the flaps come down and cover their ears, and my daddy had one. Um, so these are sitting on the table. Well, bas relief, a low relief, is something we're all familiar with because our coins have low relief sculpture on them, every one of them. So I've always loved looking at coins because of that. You know, how did this person do all this detailed work? I would ask myself when I was little, or make texture rubbings on the coins to see them better. Just loved them. Um, so bas relief's not a new thing. It's ancient. And here's an example with the lion, 645, 635 before the Christian era, and at the British Museum in London. So it's from Iraq. And thank you, British Museum in London, for keeping those things safe, those pieces of artwork safe. The one with the horses on it is high relief, an example of high relief. So, you know, things look like they're really standing off. All relief sculptures flat on the back and 3D on the front. You can touch it. So I made the farmer and his cat as a bas relief, and I put a crow on there just as a symbol of something bad happening, you know. So this is another story of a lady from Lee County. She lost the set out of her ring. So I don't know if it was a diamond. In artwork, I draw it as a diamond, but I don't know that it was. But she couldn't find it anywhere. It meant something to her. So she went to Pontotoc County, Woodland area, to see Seymour Prater, and he talked to her for a while. And the reason I'm telling you that he talked to him for a while is because I interviewed his granddaughter, great-granddaughter, several years ago in the nursing home, and she said, I think he did it in the talking to him first. She said, I think he was just had such a good mind and such a good investigator that he could figure stuff out. But she was interesting to talk to, really sweet. So the lady went to Seymour Prater. He said, well, when you were throwing out the wash water to the chickens, the set fell out of your ring and one of your chickens ate it. So don't sell your chickens until you figure out which one got the set. So she made herself a little plan. She decided that when I get home, I'm killing all those chickens. So that's what she did. She killed all of her chickens and went through their gizzards to see if she could find the stone. And you know, that's a lot. If you've ever seen chickens killed before, there's a lot going on there. Um, so she didn't find the stone in any of the chickens, and she's killed all of her chickens. And I know people used to have chickens to eat, but they were their pets too because they fed them, they put them up at night, they cared for them as well. So she had to make this decision, you know, how bad do I want this stone? And so this, so that's what this piece of sculpture is about too. This one that you see there is the first one that I did, and I tried to make her look really scary because I thought that's a horrible thing to do. But then I thought she really wanted the stone, but so did the chicken. So this this girl wanted it, and this girl wanted it. So these two girls, you know. So here she is at the when she's making her decision. You know, I love the chicken, but I'm fixing to kill you. You know, so. Big decisions that we all have to make, not about chickens, but about lots of things. There's a moment that we could go left or right. We have to decide. So I kind of made this one with the feet the same color as this weird hat. I'd seen this hat similar to this on my mother's head when we went swimming at Pontotoc Lake. We did not go swimming until I was 9 years old. Daddy wouldn't let us get in any body of water unless they were staying in the pond or something. So we couldn't swim. And went to Pontotoc Lake, and Mama pulls out this plastic rubber hat and put it on. I thought, I'm just going to die. Mama's got this rubber hat on. But when we got out of the lake, we looked like we had been in Pontotoc Lake with our hair, all this green stuff all over it. Mama pulls that hat off in slow motion and all this fluffy hair, just like, I get it now. So I made this hat for for my chicken lady because she was like the chicken. They both wanted the same thing, and the chicken was like her. Um, so, set this one back down. But Mama's swim hat did not have that comb on it, but that would have been way cooler in my mind if it had. I would have been okay with that. Um, so this piece I didn't bring today because I just couldn't find it. So what I do is I make them out of raw clay, and then I paint them black with underglaze, and then I mix up colored underglaze and put on top, and no glossy glaze on it, and fire them like that. I fire them many times. Like I'll decide I want this color, and then I'll fire it at a low temperature, and then add to it, because when you fire something in a kiln, it changes the color. Even if it's underglaze, it's not the same color it was when you first painted it on. So I have to keep adjusting and firing. But a person that really influenced me was Wayne Ferguson from Kentucky. He's still living, and he's a pottery teacher, I believe. He started making these really funny bas reliefs that were a lot better than a penny or a nickel. So I liked them way better. So I started thinking about maybe I could do that. And, in this other one, I'd put this frame around the relief of Seymour Prater doing this, but it came from Wayne Ferguson. So I follow him on Instagram, and he has some interesting pieces of artwork. So, everything you see all of your life influences you, how you are, and, your creativity as well, your writing, whatever. It just kind of builds up and comes out in different ways. Um, so this is the one that I made. Um, so you lost your diamond while feeding the chickens, although she was throwing out her wash water. So I found a picture of a lady with her hands behind her back, and of course added the knife. And I was thinking, when you kill chickens, there's just a lot going on when you kill chickens, because there's a lot of noise. There are feathers everywhere. There's blood. I mean, I watched Daddy kill a chicken one time, and he cut its head off, and he put it in a garbage can and slammed the lid down, and it was jumping all around in there. And we're little, and we're thinking, that's cool. We're not ever watching TV again. But then he cut the head off of one and let it go, and it ran towards us, and it was like the best thing ever. And he did that just to scare us. So I was thinking about similarities between women and chickens, and so that goes into some of the funnier things that I make, because I'm thinking of eggs, and I'm thinking of blood, and I'm thinking of cackling sometimes, and wanting a stone to wear around your neck. I don't know where to put this. I think I'll just hang it around my neck, maybe. Just gonna hang it around my neck. I know, I'll make a hole in my ear and just hang it from my ear. How about that's a good idea? And everybody's like, yeah, I like that idea. It's absurd, isn't it? So, and yeah, and let's hang something around. Anything we can hang something around, let's do it. Okay, that's good. Anyway, so there's this one finished as well. So I did another one. Once I get on something, it's hard to, knock me off my track there. So I started making bowls with this story on there, but um, I don't know how many people want to buy a bowl with. So I kind of moved away from that. And if you've taken my class, we've done this before, where we make the art on a piece of paper and do all the writing backwards, and then we transfer it to wet clay and peel it off, kind of like a tattoo or something like that, like a kid's tattoo, and fire it. So to for references for chickens, I've been raised with chickens, but you can be around something all your life, and when it's time to actually draw it or make it, you're like, how does that actually work? And I really realized that when somebody asked me to draw a car, I could not draw a car at all. I didn't know how the bumper ended, before it gets to the tire, and all that stuff. So hardest thing ever to draw a car or truck or something. So I'm looking at all these pictures of chickens, and then I got my neighbor who loved her chickens to pose, and she sent me probably 50 photographs of her holding this chicken. And I would text back, and I would say, pretend like you love the chicken. I said, pretend like you're going to kill the chicken, but you still love it at the same time. She said, like, no problem. So she sent me all these pictures. You're thinking about killing the chicken. So with the chicken one, um, I made some similarities between the woman and chicken here. So I told you about the feet and the hat the same color, but also the pattern on the apron, because the chicken also has this little dainty pattern on it too, these feathers overlapping. Um, and then the combs with the same red color and use the same color on her lips. And so sometimes I show her as like a crazy person. Well, I guess I don't have any pictures. Yeah, like with the red off her lips and stuff. And I make dishes. You know, nobody wants to buy these either, but it's okay. And I started making this tattoo on her chin because one of my former students got a tattoo like that, and I thought I like it, so I started doing that. So a lot of my pottery has diamonds on it, and people that buy it don't know that it's a Seymour Prater pot. They don't know the stories at all, but it just led me down a different path, a long path. So I make a lot of these plates because that's pretty much instant gratification. I can make a plate in 2 days maybe, and I just write the stories. You know, like when we were in school, we'd write in a circle. The things you think when you're little are the same things that you come back to when you're older. You know, you're looking out of the same eyes. Whatever you're good at as a child, that's you. You know, you could run fast. That was your good thing. You know, it's probably all your life you could run fast. So I asked the students. I teach at Northwest Community College this semester. You know, what is your superpower? And I said, and you know, nothing is not an acceptable answer. And so the answers I get are the things kids would say. I'm very strong. They're on the weightlifting team, you know, or I can throw a baseball hard, or I'm I'm very empathetic to people. I'm a good listener, you know, things like that. So here's another story, and this is I'm not sure where this man lived, but it's probably Aberdeen. It was Aberdeen where this guy lived, and he, I think it's his. Let me get this right. Okay, this story was told by Dr. Thomas Payne from Aberdeen. Now lives in Nashville, but he was a little boy when this happened, and they had a two-story house, and it caught on fire. So the neighbors came running, which people used to do. If a house caught on fire, you know, you couldn't, wasn't the fire department's responsibility, although if there was a fire department in 1925, which I don't know if there was, but people had troughs out front, and that's where they had water. They would throw water on it, and they would run in the house and take out whatever they could, because the house is probably going to burn down in 1925 if it catches on fire. So all the neighbors came running. They're taking stuff out, and there's people throwing water on the house. So I'm thinking of all these sounds and all these things happening at the same time. There's water, there's people you care about and know, your neighbors, taking out armfuls of stuff for you. Well, about 2 weeks later, when they're looking through the stuff, the man wanted to find something that had belonged to his daddy, and it was a Civil War Colt revolver that he cherished. It was gone. So he went to Seymour Prater in Pontotoc County in the Woodland community, told him the whole story. Seymour Prater, I see that one of your neighbors took your Colt revolver. So that's what this one is about. And I got my son to pose. I took lots of pictures of my son again, and it also looks like a student I used to have. I didn't mean for it to, but it just came out looking like that. I sent a picture of it to him, and he said, "That does look like me, Miss Morton." Anyway, this is him, like the chicken lady, at that moment where he's deciding what he's going to do. Because, you know, we can all be honest people until the right temptation comes in front of us that's just made just for us. Nobody's going to know. This would be a perfect opportunity. Everybody's taking stuff out. They'll never know, except for Seymour Prater, you know. So he makes the decision whether I'm going to be just a nice neighbor or am I going to be a thief. And so he decides he wants it really bad, so he took it. So the man goes to Seymour Prater, told him about it. Seymour told him his neighbor got it. So he said it's the neighbor that lives closest to you. So he went to the neighbor's house, accused him of it. It was the wrong neighbor. It was the wrong house. So the neighbor was very offended, and so then he went home without the Colt revolver and started thinking about it. And he was like, "Oh, this house on the other side's even closer." Dang! So he went to that house, confronted the neighbor, and he had it hidden in a corn crib, and he gave it back to him. So it was returned. So a lot of these stories are kind of your neighbor, your brother, your son. Somebody has done this, has taken this thing from you. Not always, but I thought that's interesting, and that's why I chose these stories, because there was that twist. And there are other stories with the same twist. One man, I believe he hid his money under a board in where they parked the car, and he died without telling anybody where it was. Well, he had two sons, so one of the sons went to Seymour Prater. He told him where the money was, um, and then, like several months later, the other son thought, "I want to know where the money is." So he went to Seymour Prater, and he said, "I already told your brother where it was," and he went and looked under the board, and it was gone. So his brother had taken it and not mentioned it to him. So here's another view of this one. He's going to put his hat over the gun. Oh, and this is the next thing I'm going to be working on. Is my mother always used to tell me about Leon Turner. I don't know if y'all have heard of him. Um, One Night of Madness. She's from Attala County, and you mentioned she's 90 years old. If you mention Leon Turner to her, and she has dementia, he's a killer. He's a killer. And so I'm working on a piece of sculpture about this story as well. So you'll be seeing that in the future, hopefully. But happened right here in Mississippi, and this inmate here from Parchman is the one who caught him with his bloodhounds because he was the handler. Notice he's got a strap on his leg because he has a gun strapped to his leg. They've let him. His name was Hogjaw Mullins, so I must make pottery. I must make sculpture about this. He was the real interesting person in this story anyway. I saw one account. This was his daughter was telling this, had written this, that somebody came to find out where they'd lost something, and he wasn't at the house. He was out looking for his cows, and they left. He went to Woodland Baptist Church, and there was an outbreak of saddle thieves. And so some young people from the church thought they would trick him. So they went up to his house, rode their horses, and took the saddles off and laid them across the fence in the pasture, and then went on to his house and to the house part and told him that someone had stolen their saddles, if he could help them. And he said, "Well, my pigs have your saddles right now, and they're having a good time with them." So I think when he first started, he charged a nickel to tell people where the things were lost. So there are lots of stories in this book, and it may be in your library here. I don't know. You should check it out or buy this book on Amazon. Huh? She did, Sydney Fisher. Um, but there are lots of good stories. Anne King told this story that was not in the book. Her grandfather went to him about his pocket watch that was lost, and Prater told him that it was lost, and he'd left it on the porch rail, and he said, your brother-in-law took it. It was at your brother-in-law's house. That's where he left it. So put it up there when he was washing up. So man went to confront his brother-in-law. Now this is very risky to do, and he denied having it. And she said her grandfather said, Prater says you do. He says you took it off the porch rail. And so he gave him his watch back. That was from the Robs community, maybe Redland area. Does anybody know or have a story of anybody that could do things like rubbing off a wart or had a special ability like that?
My mother-in-law could do that. It didn't work on family. She couldn't do it. Like my daughter had a wart, she couldn't do it, but the coach in town would bring players to her, and they would just sit with her and they would just chat, and she'd rub the wart, and it would disappear within days, not on the spot, but she didn't.
Some people say that they would rub it with a red rag and then bury the rag in the backyard, and so many days later the wart was supposed to be gone. I forgot to tell you the last part of the chicken lady story. She went back to Seymour Prater and said, I did not find the diamond in any of the chickens. And he said, well, you have one hen sitting on eggs. So she went home, she pulled that hen off those eggs and killed her and found her diamond.